You laughed when you threw her out. You stopped laughing when she came back. At exactly 8:14 on a grey Thursday morning, the front lobby of the Franklin Federal Records building moved with the usual rhythm of government routine. Shoes tapped across polished marble. Security bins slid along metal rails. Coffee steamed in paper cups as employees hurried past badge scanners and elevator doors that opened and closed with mechanical indifference. It was the kind of place where everything felt controlled, timed, and cold. Officer Daniel Mercer liked it that way. Standing near the entrance in a dark blue uniform pressed so sharply it looked cut from steel, Mercer watched the crowd with the confidence of a man who believed the doorway belonged to him. He was 6'2", broad-shouldered, jaw tight, eyes always searching for someone to correct, someone to question, someone to remind that rules could be bent depending on who stood in front of him. Most people kept their heads down and moved quickly when they saw him. They knew his reputation. He rarely raised his voice, because he didn't need to. His stare usually did the work for him. A young intern fumbled for her ID badge. Mercer sighed loudly enough for half the lobby to hear. A janitor carrying supplies was told to use the side entrance even though he had full clearance. 2 men in suits passed without a glance. That was the pattern. Some people were delayed. Some people were invisible. Others were waved through before they even slowed down. Then the revolving door turned once more, and she stepped inside. Vanessa Cole wore a charcoal coat that fell neatly to her knees, low black heels, and simple gloves folded in one hand. She carried a sealed document envelope under her arm and a leather satchel at her side. Nothing about her demanded attention. Nothing about her asked for permission either. She moved with calm purpose, eyes forward, pace steady, as if she had walked through more difficult rooms than this one. Mercer noticed her immediately. He straightened, chin lifting slightly. Around them, people felt the shift before a word was spoken. The lobby had seen scenes like this before. Some slowed down to watch. Others pretended not to. Vanessa reached the scanner and placed her envelope carefully on the counter. "Morning," she said. Her voice was even, warm, professional. Mercer didn't return the greeting. He looked her up and down, lingering just long enough to make the insult clear. "Deliveries use the loading dock," he said. A few nearby heads turned. Vanessa met his eyes. "I'm not a delivery." Mercer smirked. "Then you're in the wrong building." She slid a letter across the counter. "I'm expected on the 12th floor." He never looked at it. Instead, he tapped the paper once with 2 fingers, then pushed it back toward her. Not happening. The scanner light blinked green, waiting. Mercer reached over and shut it off. The small click echoed louder than it should have. Vanessa remained still. No anger. No pleading. No embarrassment. Just stillness. That unsettled him more than resistance would have. He said, voice tightening, "You need to leave. Now." She glanced past him at the elevators, then back at his nameplate. Daniel Mercer. She seemed to memorize it. "You're refusing lawful access to a federal employee?" she asked. Mercer laughed softly, the kind of laugh meant for an audience. "I'm refusing nonsense." With a dismissive sweep of his arm, he knocked her satchel from the counter. Paper stayed inside, but the bag hit the floor with a flat thud that silenced the room. Someone gasped. Someone else pretended to check their phone. Mercer stepped aside and pointed toward the revolving door. "Out." Vanessa slowly bent, picked up her satchel, dusted it once, and stood taller than before. Then she gave him a look so calm it felt almost merciful. "Thank you, Officer Mercer," she said quietly. "I needed your full name." She turned and walked out into the morning drizzle without another word. Behind the glass doors, Mercer grinned at the crowd like a man who had just won something. He had no idea that in less than 10 minutes, 3 black SUVs would roll to the curb, and every person in that lobby would remember exactly where they were standing. Rain tapped softly against the wide glass panels of the Franklin Federal Records building as the lobby tried to return to normal. It never truly did. Moments after Vanessa Cole walked out, conversations resumed in low voices, but the air had changed. The marble floors were still polished, the security lights still blinking, the elevators still rising and falling on schedule, yet something uneasy now lingered beneath the routine. People had seen Officer Daniel Mercer embarrass visitors before. They had seen contractors delayed, interns reduced to tears, older employees sent back to their cars for identification they had already shown twice. But this time felt different. Perhaps it was the way the woman had not argued. Perhaps it was the way she had looked directly at him, as though she knew something no one else in the room did. Mercer did not believe in instincts. He believed in control. He adjusted his belt, straightened the crease in his sleeve, and waved the next person forward with a sharp flick of 2 fingers. "Move along," he said. A man in a navy suit stepped through. A courier rolled in a cart of boxes. A receptionist from the 7th floor hurried by with files clutched to her chest. Life continued. Still, Mercer found himself glancing at the entrance every few seconds. He told himself it was annoyance. Nothing more. Across the room, Linda Chavez, the senior desk clerk, watched him from behind her station. Linda had worked in the building for 23 years. She knew the rhythm of every shift, every supervisor, every guard who lasted more than 6 months. She also knew when trouble was close enough to smell. "You should have read the letter," she said quietly when Mercer passed her desk. He stopped. "Excuse me." Linda did not look up from her keyboard. "The envelope she brought. You should have read it." Mercer gave a short laugh. "You know her." "No," Linda said. "But people who belong here usually do not need to prove it." He leaned closer. "Then maybe she should learn some manners." Linda finally met his eyes. "Maybe everyone should." Mercer walked away before she could say more. He disliked employees who forgot their place. At 8:21, the revolving door turned again. Everyone near the entrance looked up, but it was only a pair of accountants from a nearby office building, shaking umbrellas and complaining about traffic on Constitution Avenue. Mercer exhaled through his nose and returned to scanning badges. At 8:23, the lobby monitors flickered for half a second. Then the exterior security camera feed appeared on one screen. A black SUV pulled to the curb. Then another. Then a third. Long, glossy, government issue. No logos. No plates visible from the angle. The room grew quiet in pieces. First the guards noticed. Then the clerks. Then the people waiting in line. Even the elevator doors seemed to open more softly. Mercer stared at the monitor, jaw tightening. "Probably inspectors," one young guard whispered. "3 vehicles," another whispered back. The first SUV door opened. A man in a dark overcoat stepped out, broad-shouldered, carrying himself with the kind of discipline no uniform could teach. 2 women followed, both in tailored suits, both wearing earpieces. The second vehicle opened and more agents emerged. Calm. Efficient. Silent. No one rushed, yet everyone moved with purpose. Mercer stepped toward the entrance. "What is this?" he muttered. Linda did not answer. She was already standing. Through the rain-streaked glass, a final passenger exited the third SUV. Vanessa Cole. Same charcoal coat. Same measured stride. Same satchel now resting neatly on her shoulder. She held no anger on her face, no triumph, no need to perform for the room that had watched her leave. She simply walked toward the doors as the agents formed around her. Mercer felt the strange sensation of a room turning away from him without anyone moving. His authority, so loud 10 minutes earlier, now sounded very small inside his own head. The revolving door began to turn, and for the first time that morning, Officer Daniel Mercer took one step backward. The revolving door completed its turn with a hush that somehow sounded louder than shouting. Vanessa Cole stepped into the lobby surrounded by 6 federal agents whose calm presence changed the temperature of the room more effectively than any command ever could. Rain glistened on their coats. Their shoes left faint dark marks across the marble before the floor crew hurried to wipe them away. No. One had told them to. Some people simply recognized history when it walked in. Officer Daniel Mercer tried to recover first with posture, then with voice. "This is a restricted facility," he said, stepping forward. It was the same sentence he had used on delivery drivers, interns, retirees, and anyone else he believed could be pushed backward. Today it landed differently. The broad-shouldered man from the lead vehicle reached inside his coat, produced credentials, and held them open for exactly 3 seconds. "Special Agent Marcus Reed," he said. His tone was level, almost polite. "Federal Office of Civil Rights Enforcement." Mercer looked at the badge, then at Vanessa, then back again as if one of them might become less real if he stared hard enough. There must be some mistake. Reed closed the badge wallet. There have been several. A quiet ripple moved through the lobby. Linda Chavez lowered her eyes to hide the smile forming at the corner of her mouth. 2 younger guards suddenly found great interest in checking empty security trays. Vanessa did not rush the moment. She removed one glove, smoothed a drop of rain from the envelope under her arm, and looked around the room that had watched her leave 10 minutes earlier. "Good morning," she said. The same warm, professional tone. This time no one ignored it. Reed gestured toward the scanner. "Miss Cole, after you." Mercer instinctively reached toward the console. "Hold on. I need authorization for access." Vanessa turned to him with the same calm expression that had unsettled him before. "You already denied authorization once," she said. "That decision has been reviewed." Reed nodded to one of the agents, who placed a folder on the counter. "Thick. Tabbed. Prepared." "Officer Mercer," Reed said, "please step aside while we secure entry and begin preliminary interviews." Mercer flushed red at the collar. "Interviews for what?" Reed did not blink. "Pattern-based discrimination complaints, obstruction of lawful access, and misuse of gate authority inside a federal workplace." The word seemed to drain sound from the room. Even the elevators paused with doors open, as if listening. Mercer laughed once, too quickly. "Complaints? Anyone can file complaints." Vanessa gently placed her satchel on the counter and unlatched it. She withdrew a slim tablet and tapped the screen. "True," she said. "That is why evidence matters more." She turned the display toward Reed first, then toward Mercer. Security footage timestamps. Audio logs. Witness statements. Dates spanning months. Names. Incidents. Patterns. The satchel Mercer had knocked to the floor had not carried random papers. It had carried the final signatures for an active review. "You were being evaluated?" Mercer asked, the sentence breaking apart as it left him. Vanessa met his eyes. The building was. A woman from Human Resources near the elevators covered her mouth. A courier quietly stepped backward to stay out of the frame of whatever was happening. Linda finally spoke, voice clear across the lobby. "I told you to read the letter." Reed signaled 2 agents toward the side office beside security. "We will need your access card, radio, and a few minutes of your time." Mercer did not move. Men like him often believed hesitation could reverse reality. "I have worked here 11 years, he said. "I keep this place safe." Vanessa's answer was soft enough that everyone leaned in to hear it. "Safe for whom?" No one had an answer. Reed held out his hand for the card. This time Mercer noticed dozens of eyes on him, the same audience he once enjoyed controlling. Only now the room was not waiting for him to speak. It was waiting to see whether he would obey. Daniel Mercer's hand hovered over his access card for several long seconds, as if the thin rectangle of plastic still contained the authority slipping away from him. The lobby remained silent except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the distant ding of an elevator no one entered. He finally unclipped the card from his belt and placed it in Special Agent Marcus Reed's open hand. The sound it made on Reed's palm was small, almost forgettable, yet everyone in the room felt the weight of it. Reed passed the card to another agent without looking down. "Thank you," he said. Mercer hated that those two words sounded like an order. "This is ridiculous," Mercer muttered, glancing around for support that never came. "I did my job." Vanessa Cole lifted the folder from the counter and opened it with careful precision. Inside were printed reports, transcripts, and still images from security cameras. Each page was marked with dates. Each date told a story Mercer had assumed no one would bother remembering. "You delayed a wheelchair access request for 22 minutes on March 3rd, Vanessa said calmly. "You required extra identification from 3 employees with permanent badges on April 11th. You redirected contractors with valid clearance to the loading dock 7 times in 1 month. You denied entry to visitors based on appearance, not policy, on multiple occasions." Mercer scoffed, but the sound lacked conviction. "That is called discretion." Vanessa turned another page. "No. That is called selective enforcement." Linda Chavez quietly folded her hands at the front desk. 2 interns near the coffee kiosk stared openly now. A courier set down his clipboard and did not pretend to be busy anymore. The room had become a witness stand without anyone announcing it. Reed motioned toward the side office beside security. "Officer Mercer, we need to continue this in private." Mercer remained rooted in place. "I am not going anywhere until my supervisor gets here." Reed nodded once, as if he had expected that answer. "Your supervisor was notified 12 minutes ago." Right on cue, the elevator doors opened. Out stepped Harold Benson, director of building security, a man in his late 50s whose tie was never straight and whose patience was rarely visible. Today, however, he looked unusually composed. He walked across the marble floor, took in the agents, the folder, Mercer's expression, and then stopped beside Vanessa. "Ms. Cole," he said, extending a hand. "I apologize for your treatment this morning." Mercer blinked hard. "So?" Benson turned to him. "Daniel, step into the office." It was the first time anyone had used Mercer's first name in the lobby. It landed harder than a reprimand. "You cannot be serious," Mercer said. "You know me." Benson's eyes did not move. "That is precisely the problem." A low murmur spread through the waiting line and disappeared just as quickly. Mercer looked around again, still searching for the old room, the room that feared him, deferred to him, let him set the tone. It was gone. In its place stood strangers, co-workers, clerks, guards, visitors, all suddenly willing to meet his eyes. Vanessa closed the folder and tucked it under her arm. "Patterns survive because people get used to them," she said softly. "Until one day they do not." Benson pointed toward the office door. "Now." Mercer took 2 stiff steps, then stopped beside the scanner he had switched off earlier. He looked at the machine, then at Vanessa. "You set me up." Her expression did not change. "No, Officer Mercer." "You introduced yourself." Reed almost smiled. The agents opened the office door, and Mercer entered without another word. The door closed behind him with a muted click. For a moment, no one moved. Then Benson exhaled, loosened his tie, and faced the lobby. "Everyone with appointments this morning," he said, voice carrying cleanly across the room, "you may proceed." Vanessa stepped to the scanner. Reed nodded to the nearest guard, who hurried to reactivate it. The light turned green instantly. She placed her badge against the reader. A soft tone sounded. "Access granted." The same doorway that rejected her 10 minutes earlier now opened without resistance. She did not look back as she walked toward the elevators, but every person in that lobby watched her pass like Justice had just learned how to use the front entrance. The elevator climbed in smooth silence toward the 12th floor while the city blurred behind rain-streaked glass. Vanessa Cole stood beside Special Agent Marcus Reed with her satchel resting against one leg and the sealed folder held close to her side. Neither spoke for the first several floors. In buildings like this, silence often carried more meaning than conversation. At floor 7, the doors opened to a crowded hallway, then closed again. At floor 10, Reed finally glanced at her. "You could have called ahead," he said. Vanessa kept her eyes on the changing numbers above the door. "I did." Reed almost smiled. "I meant before he made a scene." "No," she said. Softly. "I needed him comfortable." The doors opened on 12. A private reception area waited beyond them, lined with framed photographs of agency milestones, policy signings, and smiling officials who preferred history neat and edited. A receptionist stood immediately. "Ms. Cole, conference room B is ready." Vanessa thanked her and walked down the corridor with the same measured pace she had used in the lobby. Calm was not performance for her. It was discipline. Inside the conference room, 6 people were already seated around a polished walnut table. Attorneys. Compliance officers. 2 senior investigators. A deputy regional director joining by secure video from Chicago. Coffee cups steamed beside legal pads. Screens glowed with spreadsheets and timestamps. Everyone rose when she entered. Not out of ceremony. Out of respect. Reed closed the door behind them. "We have confirmation from downstairs," he said. Subject removed from post. Access surrendered. Vanessa placed the folder at the center of the table. "Then let us begin while the building still remembers what happened." She opened the file and spread out pages in neat rows. Complaint summaries. Visitor logs. Internal emails. Badge swipe data. Camera stills from the lobby over 8 months. One chart showed average screening times by demographic categories. The disparity was impossible to ignore. Another chart mapped who was delayed, redirected, questioned, or denied. Patterns that felt invisible in daily life looked undeniable once organized by truth. Deputy Director Helen Morris spoke through the monitor. "How many incidents total?" "Documented?" Vanessa asked. 132. Several people shifted in their chairs. "Likely higher," she continued. "Most people do not file complaints when humiliation is normalized." An attorney tapped a pen against his notebook. "And Mercer?" Vanessa slid forward a separate binder marked personnel review. "He is not the system. He is a symptom with keys." Reed leaned against the wall, arms folded. "Meaning?" Vanessa met the room with steady eyes. "He acted that way because he believed he would be protected. People do not become bold in isolation. They become bold in culture." No one argued. They had all worked long enough to know she was right. The screen changed to a still image from the morning. Mercer standing tall at the scanner. Vanessa outside the revolving door in the rain. The timestamp glowed in the corner. 8:16 a.m. That image will matter, Morris said. Publicly, asked one compliance officer. Vanessa shook her head. "Not first. First we fix access, reporting lines, training authority, camera review policy, and complaint routing. Accountability without reform becomes theater." Reed gave a small nod. This was why she led operations others only understood after the headlines. She was not interested in moments. She was interested in outcomes. A younger investigator near the far end of the table cleared his throat. "Ms. Cole, if you knew he would target you, why go alone?" The room grew still. Vanessa looked toward the rain beyond the 12th floor windows. "Because some people only reveal themselves when they think no one important is watching." The answer settled heavily over the table. She closed the binder and straightened the stack of evidence. "At 9 o'clock, we interview staff. At 10:30, we audit entry procedures. By lunch, every employee in this building will know the front door belongs to policy, not personality." Reed checked his watch. "And Mercer?" Vanessa gathered one final folder, thinner than the rest. At 11, she said, voice calm as ever, "I would like to hear what a powerful man sounds like after the room stops protecting him." At 10:57 in the morning, the side office beside the security desk felt smaller than it had an hour earlier. Daniel Mercer sat at a plain metal table beneath harsh fluorescent lights that hummed without sympathy. His radio was gone. His access card was gone. Even his duty belt rested on a shelf across the room, reduced from symbol to storage. The walls were bare except for a faded evacuation map and a clock whose second hand seemed louder each time it moved. Power often disappears in silence before anyone notices it is gone. Harold Benson stood near the door reviewing notes on a yellow legal pad. He had spoken very little since bringing Mercer inside. That worried Mercer more than anger would have. Across from him sat a compliance recorder with a laptop open and fingers poised above the keys. Every word now had a witness. "I want representation," Mercer said for the third time. Benson did not look up. "You have been informed of procedure." "I have rights." "You do," Benson replied calmly. "So did the people you delayed this year." Mercer leaned back in his chair and forced a laugh he did not feel. "This is political. Somebody wanted headlines." Benson finally raised his eyes. "No, Daniel. Headlines come later. This came from patterns." Before Mercer could answer, the door opened. Vanessa Cole entered with Special Agent Marcus Reed and one senior attorney carrying a thin file. No rush. No raised voice. No need. Mercer straightened instinctively, then seemed to resent himself for doing it. Vanessa took the seat across from him and folded her hands on the table. The same hands he had dismissed at the front counter now controlled the pace of the room. "Good morning again, Officer Mercer," she said. Mercer stared at her. "You enjoy this?" She tilted her head slightly. "Enjoy what?" "Trying to ruin people." The attorney beside her uncapped a pen. Reed remained standing by the wall. Vanessa's expression did not change. Accountability feels like ruin only to those who never expected it. The recorder typed steadily. Mercer glanced at the keyboard, then away. "I was enforcing standards." Vanessa opened the thin file. "Let us test that." She slid one page across the table. Badge data. On June 12, 3 contractors entered with temporary credentials. 2 white males were cleared in under 30 seconds. 1 Latino veteran waited 9 minutes. Another page. On August 2nd, an employee with a permanent badge was asked for secondary identification after you told her she did not look like management. Another page. On September 19th, you denied entry to a black attorney who was scheduled to argue a hearing in this building. Mercer's jaw tightened. People exaggerate. Vanessa slid one final sheet forward. Audio transcript. His own words from the lobby that morning. Deliveries use the loading dock. Then you are in the wrong building. Out. The room went still except for the clock. Mercer read the page once, then again, as if language might rescue him if given enough time. That was taken out of context. Reed spoke for the first time. "We have the context." Video 2. Mercer's shoulders dropped by an inch. Small enough that only trained eyes noticed. Vanessa noticed. "Do you know what your greatest mistake was this morning?" she asked. He said nothing. "It was not disrespecting me. It was assuming dignity can be measured by appearance." Benson closed his yellow pad. "Daniel, I gave you warnings." Mercer turned sharply. "You gave me praise." Benson's face hardened. "I praised punctuality. I warned attitude. You only heard what fed you." Even the recorder paused for half a second before typing again. Vanessa gathered the pages into one stack. "This review will recommend termination, loss of site authority, and referral for further civil inquiry." Mercer swallowed. "For one bad morning." Vanessa rose slowly from her chair. No, she placed the file back on the table. "For many mornings that looked exactly like this one to everyone except you." She moved to the door, then stopped without turning around. "Some people think doors are where power lives," she said quietly. "They forget doors swing both ways." Then she left the room, and for the first time all day, Daniel Mercer understood that nothing he said next could make the clock move backward. By 12:14 in the afternoon, word had traveled through all 12 floors faster than any official memo ever could. In break rooms, copy centers, stairwells, and hallways lined with gray carpet and framed compliance posters, people spoke in lowered voices about the same thing. The front desk officer had been removed. Federal investigators were inside the building. Interviews were happening behind closed doors. For years, the Franklin Federal Records Building had functioned like many places do when habits grow old enough to feel permanent. Certain people were welcomed warmly. Certain people were questioned twice. Certain people learned to arrive early because they expected delays. Others learned to avoid eye contact and keep moving. Those lessons had never appeared in policy manuals, yet everyone knew them. Now the building was learning a different lesson. Conference Room B had become a steady stream of testimony. One by one, employees entered carrying memories they once considered too small to matter. A male clerk described being asked 3 times in 1 week whether he was authorized to use the freight elevator. A black attorney recounted missing the first 10 minutes of a hearing after being detained over a badge issue that did not exist. An older receptionist described watching visitors leave embarrassed while Mercer joked afterward about instincts. Each story alone sounded minor enough to dismiss. Together they formed architecture. Vanessa Cole listened to every account without interrupting. She took notes in neat lines, asking only for dates, names, and specifics. Emotion mattered, but details built cases. Across the table, Special Agent Marcus Reed observed quietly. He had seen many investigators chase dramatic moments. Vanessa was different. She understood that systems rarely collapse from one scandal. They weaken when ordinary truths are finally organized. At 12:42, Linda Chavez entered the room carrying a worn notebook she had kept in her desk drawer for years. "I started writing things down after the 3rd complaint disappeared," she said. Vanessa opened the notebook carefully. Inside were dates, initials, descriptions, and names of witnesses. Small handwriting. Precise. Patient. Reed looked at Linda with new respect. "Why keep this?" Linda shrugged. "Because someday someone honest might ask." Vanessa closed the notebook and smiled softly. Someone just did. Meanwhile, in the lobby below, the atmosphere had changed in visible ways. Guards greeted visitors with full sentences. The scanner line moved efficiently. A maintenance worker carrying tools was waved through with courtesy instead of suspicion. 2 interns who had once avoided the entrance now laughed openly near the coffee kiosk. Nothing in the architecture had changed, yet the building already felt less heavy. Sometimes justice enters quietly and rearranges the air. At 1:05, Harold Benson stood before gathered staff in the atrium. His tie was still crooked. His voice was not. Effective immediately, he announced, "All access decisions will follow written policy only. Any employee or visitor concern may be reported directly to compliance without supervisor filtering. Retaliation of any kind will result in termination review." Heads lifted around the room. Pens paused. People listened the way they do when rules finally sound real. Benson continued, "We confused familiarity with fairness for too long." No one applauded. This was not theater. It was something rarer. Accountability without applause. On the 12th floor, Vanessa watched the live internal feed on a monitor mounted near the conference room wall. Reed leaned beside her. "You could run a division someday," he said. She closed Linda's notebook and handed it to evidence intake. "I would rather repair 1 doorway than inherit 10 broken offices." Reed laughed quietly. "That sounds like a promotion refusal." "That sounds like experience," she replied. A young analyst entered carrying fresh printouts from employee surveys taken that afternoon. Already, reports of improved treatment were coming in. One line stood out. For the first time in years, I walked through the front entrance without preparing myself first. Vanessa read it twice. Then she looked through the window toward the city beyond, the rain clouds breaking apart over Washington. People think dignity is dramatic, she said softly. Most days, it looks like being able to enter a building without fear. Downstairs, the revolving door turned again and again, but now it opened for everyone the same way. At 3:18 that afternoon, sunlight finally broke through the clouds and poured across the marble lobby in long gold rectangles that had not touched the floor all morning. People noticed. Not because sunlight was rare, but because the building felt different enough for ordinary things to seem new again. The line at security moved smoothly. Greetings were returned. Questions were asked with respect instead of suspicion. A young mother pushing a stroller toward record services was helped through the scanner without delay. An older veteran with a cane was offered a chair, while his badge was verified. No one stared. No one sighed. Courtesy, once treated like an inconvenience, was suddenly policy in motion. On the 12th floor, Conference Room B had shifted from testimony to decisions. Harold Benson sat at the end of the table with two human resources attorneys, a labor advisor, Special Agent Marcus Reed, and Vanessa Cole. Folders were stacked in neat columns. Each column represented what organizations often avoid until they can no longer afford to. Documentation. Findings. Consequences. Benson adjusted his glasses and read from the summary report. Repeated misuse of discretionary authority. Verified pattern of selective screening. Conduct damaging to public trust. Failure to comply with corrective warnings. He placed the paper down and looked toward Vanessa. Anything to add? She considered the question for a moment. Only this, she said. When a person controls access, their character becomes part of the doorway. No one wrote that line down, yet everyone remembered it. The labor advisor cleared his throat. Final recommendation. Benson did not hesitate. Immediate termination of employment. Permanent revocation of site authority credentials. Referral for civil review and mandatory bias compliance record notice. The room remained still. No celebration. Serious outcomes should never feel festive. Reed signed the final page and slid it across the table. Done. At 3:42, Daniel Mercer was escorted from the side office carrying a cardboard box that looked too small to hold 11 years. Inside were a framed photo, a stainless steel coffee mug, spare gloves, and a plaque naming him Employee of the Quarter from 6 years ago. The plaque sat upside down. Mercer walked through the lobby without uniform authority, without clipped radio chatter, without the practiced stride he once used to command attention. Some employees looked up. Most did not. Power is loud when borrowed, quiet when returned. Near the front desk, Linda Chavez sorted visitor badges with careful hands. Mercer slowed as he passed her. For a second it seemed he might say something sharp, something defensive, something designed to recover dignity through tone alone. Instead he only asked, how long were people waiting for this? Linda continued working. Longer than you think. He nodded once, then moved on. By the revolving door he stopped again. Outside, the rain had ended. Pedestrians crossed Constitution Avenue under brightening skies. Delivery trucks unloaded. A city kept moving, unimpressed by private falls. Mercer glanced back toward the scanner where another officer now greeted each visitor with the same phrase. Good afternoon. How can I help you today? He seemed startled that the job could sound like that. On the 12th floor, Vanessa watched from a window that overlooked the plaza. Reed stepped beside her holding 2 paper cups of coffee. You want the good news first or the better news? He asked. She accepted 1 cup. Try me. Complaint hotline traffic doubled. He handed her a second sheet. An employee satisfaction surveys just jumped 28 points in 4 hours. Vanessa smiled faintly. People do not need miracles, she said. They need consistency. Reed looked down at the plaza where Mercer crossed alone with the box under one arm. Do you ever feel sorry for men like that? Vanessa took a sip before answering. I feel sorry for everyone who thought they had to shrink so he could feel tall. The sunlight widened across the floor behind them. Below, the revolving door turned again as a black woman in business attire entered, badge ready, shoulders relaxed. She did not brace herself. She did not rehearse explanations in her mind. She simply walked in. Vanessa watched her pass through security in under 10 seconds and said quietly, almost to herself, "There. That is what winning looks like." By 5:36 that evening, the Franklin Federal Records building was settling into the softer rhythm that comes when a hard day has finally told the truth. The lobby lights glowed warm against polished marble. Cleaning crews moved quietly with carts and mops. Elevators opened to emptier halls. The morning crowd was gone, replaced by the small sounds of closing time, keys turning in drawers, printers powering down, tired laughter drifting from offices where people had survived another workday. Yet this day would not be filed away so easily. Some days change procedures. Others change memory. Vanessa Cole stood alone near the front entrance holding her coat over one arm and a slim folder under the other. She had spent the last 2 hours signing reports, reviewing interim reforms, and answering calls from regional offices that suddenly wanted to know how to inspect their own front doors. Success often arrives disguised as extra paperwork. Harold Benson approached carrying 2 visitor badges and a cardboard sign that had once read temporary security delay. He placed both items into a disposal bin nearby. Should have done that years ago, he said. Vanessa glanced at the sign. Most people know what needs fixing long before they know how to fix it. Benson nodded slowly. I was late. You were not first, she replied. But you were not last either. He seemed grateful for the mercy in that sentence. Across the lobby, the new evening officer greeted each departing employee by name when he could and with respect when he could not. It was remarkable how quickly a building could relearn manners once fear stopped teaching the lessons. Linda Chavez emerged from the desk area with her purse over one shoulder and the old notebook tucked beneath her arm. I am taking this home, she said, lifting it slightly. No more secret evidence in my drawer. Vanessa smiled. Good. Let it become history. Linda studied her for a moment. You know they will talk about today for years. Vanessa looked toward the revolving door where strangers came and went without tension. I hope they talk about tomorrow instead. Outside, the city wore the clean shine that follows rain. Streetlights reflected in shallow puddles. Traffic rolled steady along Constitution Avenue. A food cart on the corner sent the smell of roasted onions into the cooling air. Ordinary life had resumed, which is often the clearest sign justice has done its work. Marcus Reed stepped in from the sidewalk holding a paper bag. Turkey sandwich, he said. You skipped lunch again. She accepted it with a quiet thank you. Any updates? 3 neighboring facilities requested immediate access audits. 2 directors suddenly discovered empathy. And 1 senator wants to commend the operation after pretending these complaints did not exist for years. Vanessa laughed softly. Amazing what a public building can teach private courage. Reed glanced toward the street. Car is ready when you are. She did not move yet. Through the glass doors, another woman approached from outside, late 30s, carrying a laptop bag and walking with the tense shoulders of someone expecting trouble before it starts. She slowed as she reached security, almost rehearsing herself for resistance. The evening officer smiled and held the scanner tray out politely. Good evening, ma'am. You are all set. Her badge scanned green on the first try. She blinked, surprised, then walked through with a small relieved breath she probably did not know anyone could hear. Vanessa watched until the elevator doors closed behind her. There it is again, Reed said. What? Vanessa slipped on her coat. The part no one films. The part where a stranger gets to be ordinary. They stepped outside into the cool Washington evening. Behind them, the revolving door kept turning, impartial at last. Cars passed. Lights changed. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed too loudly. The world moved on, as it should. Vanessa paused at the curb and looked back one final time at the entrance where she had been dismissed that morning. He thought he was guarding the building, she said quietly. He never understood the building was supposed to guard the people. Then she walked toward the waiting car, carrying no anger, only the calm weight of work completed. And inside the lobby she left behind, dignity kept clocking in.